next segment, I invite Ron Jackson, as well as some guests.
Larry Fischer.
Larry Fischer, to talk about the state of the domain. Ron Jackson is the editor of Ian Journal, which is one of the most widely read industry trade publications within the domain industry, and the longest tenured as well. Ron, welcome.
It's going to take about 15 minutes of your time here. In case you're not familiar with Ian Journal, one of the things that we do is a weekly domain sales report that comes out every Wednesday evening. And a lot of the sales venues report the results to us, a lot of private sellers. So we'll chart the top 20 sales of the week in all extensions. We have another chart for all the top CCTLD sales, and another one for the top non.com GTD sales. So there are those, and then underneath what's not charted, we'll give you every other sale that took place or that was publicly reported that week, from 2,000 up on .coms and 1,000 up on every other extension. So a lot of data there. So for years at these conferences, dating back about 15 years, I would give about a 15-minute report comparing sales of that quarter versus the previous quarter, that quarter against the quarter the year before. But I stopped doing that about 2 years ago because the availability of data changed so much that we couldn't really get true comparables that made any sense. And the reasons, several reasons behind that. One was that when GoDaddy went public, they were required to stop reporting. They never reported all their sales, but they used to publish some of their top sales, which gave us some insight into some of the notable sales every week. And of course, they bought Afternic, who also used to report. And once their quiet period was over, they decided not to resume reporting. And there are good reasons for doing it either way. CEDO is kind of the opposite. They're very much about making sales public. One reason you would keep them private is you could use the data as a proprietary thing, which I think Google's done in the valuation tool that they have. So that changes. So that took a certain chunk of data out. And then we have a company like Uniregistry that gives us most of their sales, but they don't do it on a weekly basis. They like to give us a massive amount all at one time. So those get reported like in 1 week, in one weekly report. There was a time, I guess last year, they only reported 8 months of sales. It was about 30 million. This year, only 13 million in another quarter. So what happens is you're trying to compare a quarter to another quarter in the time frame. You have to have so many footnotes that it no longer makes any sense. So I think what we got to, and we talked about it in a session earlier today at 1, you took all of that out. I think the general consensus is that sales have been pretty much on a steady track since the Chinese boom ended. And we're kind of waiting to see which direction they go from there. Now, since I don't have, we're not going to talk about specific numbers, I couldn't think of anyone better than Larry to join me for this, because he has a lot of insight into what you might call an invisible database. A lot of the sales that Larry does, which are some of the highest the industry's ever had, are never reported due to NDAs. So he's got unique insight into a lot of what's happening that you would never see in our reports, because we get just a small fraction of them. So, Larry,
before you go on, I just want to say a few things. I think I'm not the only one that he was thinking of. I was worried about the 10th, but I was the only one locally that could come here. But I do want to thank Ron for sharing all that he has done in this industry, because the Ian Journal has really solidified the reporting aspect for domains. And I think, Ron, you deserve a round of applause for everything you've done.
Contributor that's been able to do it over the years. We've always said that what we have is just a small sampling, just like the Nielsen TV ratings have a small sampling of what homes are actually viewing. They put diaries in homes, and that's starting to change the technology. But basically, they only monitored about 2 or 3% of all American homes. extrapolate what was happening from that. So basically, our main goal was to give you specific examples of how much a name sold for and at what price, so that you start getting a little bit of an idea of comparables. We're probably never get to what real-world real estate has with their millions and millions of transactions, but the idea is to give you some insight. Sure. Larry, you've heard all this discussion today about things remaining flat. You deal primarily in the high end of the market, ultra premiums. Including the China period when so many things were buying where we are now. How, in your view, has the market changed over the last couple of years?
Well, it definitely was a large increase with the Chinese had a strong effect on the market. It solidified both 3 letters, 2 letters, numbers, and even some of the higher end single word domains. What's happened though in the past year though, the Chinese purchasing has slowed down, that to a point where I think a lot of the, especially 3 letters, there was a dump just 2 weeks ago in the market. Somebody put over 400 3letter.coms on the market. So when it puts that many in an illiquid market, it's definitely going to hurt pricing, especially when you consider that the 2 and 3 letter domains were some of the most quote-unquote liquid domains that we had. So that's, and the summer for the most part, from not just us, but from people we've talked to, there have been sales, but it's normally a flat. Summers are usually more flat. We are seeing an uptick now, and it'll be interesting to see what happens towards the end of the year as companies want to spend their advertising budgets and their budgets that they have that they can allocate towards domains.
One thing, and by the way, Larry's partner is Ari Goldberg. Between the 2 of them, they've done some massive domain sales. And one thing that seemed to be your specialty over the years is like a one-word domain that brands a company. So they pay top dollar for these things. Right. And I'm not sure, as long as I've known you, if I ever asked you this specifically, but everyone's always curious about how deals get done. Do you, like brokers, actively go out and work them? Do people come to you? I'm wondering, in your and Ari's experience with these huge deals that you did, how were those deals put together, some of them?
Well, before I go on, I do want to thank Larry Goldberger. He is one of the founders of the monetization industry, founders of domain law, and like you, Ron, he is someone who has actually excelled in leading this industry in a number of areas.
I totally concur.
Yeah. What I want to say about each deal is different. I would say most domains that are sold at the higher ends, you have a better shot on an inbound than an outbound. Of course, you have to make so many more outbound calls. But with an inbound, you know somebody wants this name. You have to figure out how badly they want the name and negotiate as for what you want for the name. I mean, there are names that we've asked a lot of money for that have taken years to get that money. But I mean, I had one domain that started at $5,000, ended up knowing a guy that we were sending Christmas cards to each other, and 4 years later, paid almost $200,000 for the name. Then we did myworld.com last year, and that started off as an inbound of $100,000, which I think most people would have like choked and took it and prayed that it got paid. And we took another approach. We thought the name had some relevant meaning. We thought we knew who the company was and made the decision to go for what we felt would have been was a fair price, and that's when we sold it for $1.2 million. I was just talking to Dave. I don't know if Dave Evans is here, but it basically changed 2-word domains that all of a sudden everybody's calling and saying, hey, I got my this, my that. I don't need 1.2 million, I'll take $1 million. So that changed things around a lot for some people.
One of the most common questions that you get, and everyone who's been in the business for a while gets, is how much is my domain worth? People always want you to appraise their domains, and it's a very inexact science in domains. It depends on who the buyer is, how valuable the name, how deep are their pockets, how much are you willing to let it go for. I was on a panel at 1 o'clock, and appraisals was part of the subject matter, but we ran out of time before we got beyond, we were talking about appraisal tools.
Right.
And so I was kind of interested in getting your thoughts on appraisals. From my standpoint, because of the factors that I just mentioned, I've never put a great deal of stock in them, because because you'll see something, whether it's an automated tool or even an experienced broker might say, this is probably a $50,000 limit, go for $250,000, or no buyer may ever materialize for it at the $50,000 level. So what are your thoughts on trying to appraise domains in general?
Well, in general, if you have 10 people and 5 automated tools, you're going to get 15 different answers. Nothing is the same. Everyone has their own ideas of what something's worth. That's the problem within a liquid market, or it could be, that's a positive within a liquid market. If somebody comes to you and offers you a price, you have to decide based upon what you feel. I mean, initially, years ago, a lot of this was based on guts. Over time, we've seen other domain sales, so we see what things have going on in a market, and you have to determine, do you think that's fair? How does it apply to your domain? I mean, yesterday we were doing a talk show, domain registered or not. I don't know if anybody was here for that yesterday, but I make up domain names, and then I see if they're registered or if they're not registered, and then we got a panel up here of Ari, Dave Evanson, and Mark Daniels, and they guess whether it's registered or not, and we tell them whether it is or not. A couple of times, there were domains that weren't registered, but they said we're definitely taking it, so I'd say, oh, how much is that worth? And, oh, $5,000. I'm like, hey, somebody in the audience, go grab it quick. So, you know, that's really, you know.
Yeah, so I think the bottom line, you always have to take any number from an appraisal with maybe a whole tub of salt.
Yeah. Oh, you don't know how many people contact me and say, well, justify that. Esteban says this or that. And I go, well, what you should do then is call Esteban to buy it from them.
I'll tell you a story of one reason I never give an appraisal anymore, and I haven't for years and years. I had a guy, every time that I would do it, I would try to make I'd say, this is an educated guess, and I would tell them they get offended almost in every case, because everyone thinks their name's worth 10 or 20 times more than it might be.
Right.
And I could be wrong. I mean, I just say, well, you want me to guess? I'll guess it.
Right.
So anyhow, I finally said, this is not really a good idea to do. You're just offending people. So this must have been 7 or 8 years ago. I had a guy come to me, just please give me an idea on a name. I'm really lost here. I know just the wildest guess you want to make. I said, no, I am not giving you a number. And this went on. Emails, phone calls, at conferences. Please tell me, what do you think this name is worth? No one will tell me. So I said, I promise I will not take it personally. So I said, well, okay then. My guess would, I didn't think it was worth much of anything at all. So my guess is this. He goes, you idiot! How could you don't know anything. You just reamed me out like no one ever has in the 15 years since then. And I said, what happened to not taking it personally? He goes, you are not only a moron, I'm telling everyone else that you're a moron. So that's one reason I'm not big on giving advice.
I think I must have talked to him in the past.
Oh, Larry was that guy. But I think we were only supposed to fill about 15 minutes here, but until Jonathan brings the next panel up, I know we have one at 4:30. Does anyone have a question for Larry or I? You don't get a chance to ask him questions very often. And during his game show, anything he knows at all about domain sales, if you just don't ask him for an appraisal or me. Anyone?
I don't see any hands.
Yeah. Any more question? No, right here, Tim.
Larry, what's the biggest deal you've ever closed? That you can publicly, share?
I can't say what it was, but Ari and I, we've done portfolios in the 8 figures.
Jason, you?
Yes. Well, I guess we're all struck about the state of the domain industry, and there's been a lot of talk about retail needs and where they stand, and some have value, some don't, some don't make sense. Everyone has their own opinions, but do you?
As long as you don't ask me what it means about your deal.
Could you just phrase it? Do you think it's been valuable or adding more value to the pre-existing industry and domain investors, or do you think maybe it's?
I think for the most part, the GTLDs that are out there, there's some people that are going to make money, there are people that own them, it's like owning the alphabet, and there's always going to be people that buy them. But for .com users, I've seen actually an increase in value. Those people that have bought a lot of these GTLDs realize that there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace and people come back to .coms. So that's in a nutshell.